Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will be discussing how Generation Z will change the workplace. My name is Patrick Allen, and I'm the Program Manager for Kent State's Center for Corporate and Professional Development's Public Open Enrollment Programs. Our center specializes in providing employee development for partnering organizations in Northeast Ohio and around the country. We offer training as public open enrollment programs delivered in Independence, Ohio, and also on-site customized programs delivered at your location. I am joined today by Kent State facilitator Deborah Easton. I will be serving as your host, and Deb will be our presenter for today. Deb has been a communications coach for over 30 years. She provides audiences with practical and effective advice for communicating with colleagues, customers, and direct reports. Her techniques for one-to-one interactions and group communications provide participants with practical strategies for handling difficult exchanges. Deb adapts every program to the needs of unique organizational cultures and the individual learner. She has partnered with Kent State Center for Corporate and Professional Development to provide a broad range of communication skills programs for both open enrollment and custom on-site programs. Some of her programs include enhancing interpersonal communication skills, coaching accountability, dealing with difficult behaviors, and her always popular strategies for leading the multi-generational team. Everyone in attendance has been muted to avoid background noise for many of the nearly 200 registered participants. We do encourage you to ask questions at any point during the hour. You can submit your questions in writing using the control panel on the right side of your screen. I will present your questions to the presenter as time permits throughout the webinar. We are recording today's webinar, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording after we conclude our time together. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Deborah Easton.
Thank you, Patrick, and good afternoon to everybody. Well, I must tell you, this whole topic about generations is not one that I ever thought I would be talking about. But over the last 15 years, just about any topic I facilitate, somewhere along the day, someone asks a question about how do I handle the differences among the generations in the workplace. It's either a question about we have close to retiring baby boomers and how do I keep them engaged, or perhaps it is a baby boomer who says, I don't understand what this younger generation is expecting from the work environment. So it's interesting that when you take a look at generational research, how much has been written over the last 15 years in particular. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen something about this topic along the way. The unfortunate thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that for at least the last 10 years, we have been millennial bashing, not understanding where they're coming from. And my concern is the same thing may start to happen with this next generation, Generation Z. Gen Z is becoming a very important population in the workplace, and there are some differences between them and millennials, and certainly differences between Gen Z and the rest of us, regardless of our vintage. So in our time together this afternoon, our plan is to, first of all, take a little look at what the generations are, just a real quick reminder, talk a little bit about what those differences between millennials and Gen Z are, at least what we know so far, and then talk about what their expectations are for what the work environment will look like, how colleagues will interact with them. And please, at any time you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So let's start with, first of all, the all-important information about generational research. It is first based on shared experiences during our formative years. There is a difference growing up watching Leave It to Beaver and how Beaver Cleaver spoke to his father Ward than growing up watching Bart Simpson talk to Homer. Just even experiences like that can create different mindsets in people about what is appropriate in terms of their choices of behaviors or choices of how they communicate. So this is where the information comes from. There are historians, there are sociologists, there are authors, and the Pew Research Group who do quite a bit of publishing on this topic, as I'm sure you have seen. Now, one of the things that I'm always concerned about is that we must consider that generational traits are only one aspect of very diverse people. If I were sitting right now in a room of people of my similar vintage instead of the newer vintage people who are also in the room with me right now, the other baby boomer and I, well, we may have some similar characteristics, but there will be differences in how we experienced our own generation, perhaps because of gender, perhaps because of geographical location, or religious background, or race, or any of the other characteristics that make us unique as human beings. So I please caution everyone not to simply take this information about generations and use it as the one and only determinant of, oh boy, do I have you figured out. Please remember that we are all very, very unique individuals. And so, as a result, this information about generations should be used to assist in the understanding of future trends, not in an argument of which generation's mindsets are more correct than others. I know that as we go throughout the day and we engage in conflict, which is inevitable, we're trying to figure out where is it coming from, and the danger of stereotyping is something that I'm always very concerned about with this particular topic. So I really felt very strongly about starting with that caveat in the very beginning of this program. All right, so having said all of that, then, what are we taking a look at here? Well, let's talk about the breakdown of the generations. Now, I must admit, me just talking about it is unique, because when I present training on this topic, I actually go into costume and the character of each generation and do a little bit more of a visual representation of these generations. So it's different for me to simply be talking about it instead of showing you at the same time. But let's take a look at what generations have been researched and what we have been talking about. The first one is the traditionalist generation, born between 1922 and 1945. And you can see I'm representing the rotary dial telephone there to give us a bit of an idea of the mindset of this generation or the experience of this generation. And sometimes people say to me, why are we even talking about this category? We don't have anybody I work with who's still in this age bracket. Well, we're still talking about it because many of you may have this generation as your customer base, especially those of you out there in healthcare, obviously. You will have your customer base in this category. But I also think we need to realize that the mindset of the structure and the respect for hierarchy of this traditionalist generation is still in many of our organizations. It's in our culture. And if we're not aware of that, well, as you will see, when we get to talking about our more recent generations, it's a complete 180 from how the traditionalists view what the workplace should be all about. So it's still an important category. And then, of course, is the all-important baby boomer category, born between 1946 and 1964. If we do say so ourselves, we're important, and of course we do, and often. You'll notice the phone became a push-button phone. Now, baby boomers for decades have been the largest population and therefore been the central focus of researchers. How do we vote? How do we buy cars, for example? And of course, they're still taking a look at the impact we're having on aging and what retirement looks like and all of those important factors. But I think it's important to also realize that given there have been so many of us for so long, there are quite a few baby boomer policies and procedures and mindsets in the workplace as well, even though you may have a number of baby boomers who have retired over the last couple of years. I'd also, at this point, like to point out those years of baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Sometimes people ask me, well, Debbie, how do they figure out what the years are going to be? And, it all depends on who's doing the research. And I think baby boomers are a good example of this. There was an 18-year period of growth. A baby boomer was born every 8 seconds during this 18-year period. So this is the most accepted range of years for the baby boomer category from a sociology point of view. But historians will say, hey, wait a minute. If you don't remember anything about the assassination of President Kennedy, are you really a baby boomer? And so this is also some of the difficulties that we face in identifying different generations. And as you'll see, that will become even more complicated as we look at the next couple of generations. For example, the next generation is Generation X. And I bet that many of you who are listening today are in this category, born between 1965 and 1979. Gen X is actually the smallest population in the workforce. And that's kind of bad news because Gen X has been waiting for a very long time for baby boomers to get the heck out of their way so that they can implement their unique mindset and approach to work. And now they're outnumbered by the generations who are following them. And I think also we do a disservice in terms of the research because you see so much research about millennials and now Gen Z, and we're forgetting that in many instances it's Gen X that is leading our organizations. Now, it becomes even more complicated here when we look at the next category, Gen Y, or sometimes referred to as Zennials. This 5-year period, 1980 to 1985, more and more research is saying, given either life experience or the fact that this category has probably been mentored by Gen Xers, we have a 5-year category of people here who the early research said, no, the millennial category starts in 1980. But a lot of people in this 5-year category say, I don't know, I identify myself a lot more as a Gen Xer than I do as a millennial. And in truth, there is a difference. If you look at if millennials did start at 1980, there's a difference between someone who bought their own cell phone for themselves, probably that flip phone you see, and the next category, which is the millennial category, who were probably given an iPhone or a smartphone at an early age so that we would know where they are and that they're safe, and if they aren't, that they would have a means by which we can find a way to help them get safe. So perhaps there are some unique differences there that we are not aware of. But now we have this next category, Generation Z, born after 1996 until the year 2004. I don't know. It depends on the research. Some people are talking about it. Maybe it goes to 2010. Either way you look at it, this is a uniquely different generation. I mean, just look at the difference between focusing on an iPhone and an iWatch, for example. One thing is for sure with sociologists, that if they take this generation from 1996 to 2010, Generation Z will outnumber millennials by 1 million people. So this is a generation we need to obviously pay attention to. And as a result, we need to take a look at and do the math, all right? 1996, the eldest of this Generation Z turns 23 this year. And given the fact that many of them may have taken college courses during high school, and therefore, by the time they were handed a high school diploma, they were already sophomore status at a university. They may be entering the workforce much earlier and at an earlier age than we have been accustomed to. So it's a generation we need to take a look at. But I have to tell you, not so long ago, I was facilitating generational training, and people were asking me so many questions about Gen Z. At the end of the day, one of the evaluations, one of the millennials said, "You focus so much on Gen Z. I feel like millennials are being skipped over at this point." And so, that's something that maybe we need to be concerned about as well. So we have a polling question for you at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. And I do wanted to mention to everybody I was notified that we were having some audio issues, but I'm also being told that we're back now. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to send those to me. But I am going to launch this poll right now after Deb has just described all the different generations. So we would like to know how many generations are currently in your workplace, and we'll give you about a minute or so to answer that. Okay, we're getting a good number of responses here. We'll give you just a few more seconds, and then I will show you the results of the poll. Okay, and there are the results.
Wow, look at that. 47% are talking about 5 generations in their workplace. So obviously, and there's even 13% that are looking at 6 generations, looking at all of the ones we have in that list. And each generation, based on their experience growing up, I mean, just look at the phones, the different kinds of mindsets that may be there. This is a very, very relevant subject in just about every industry I have ever come into contact with. So given the fact that you have that sense of relevancy, then I think we should probably take a look at, so what are the key differences that we know so far? Remember, our eldest Gen Z are 23 this year. So what do we know so far about some of the key differences between millennials and Generation Z? Well, we define both generations, obviously, by their technological usage. I mean, that's one of the stereotypes, is that you see members of these generations walking around connected to some form of technology constantly. But think about this. Millennials are native to laptops and still in many cases utilize that laptop, versus Gen Z, who does the same type of work that millennials do on laptops on their smartphones, and in some cases find the laptop just an annoyance. Why can't I just be able to do everything on the smartphone? Then we have things like Facebook versus Instagram, or even Snapchat. Facebook was a millennial phenomenon. But if you look at it now, a lot of Gen Z don't even bother with Facebook, because what they see on Facebook are mostly their parents trying to keep track of what the Gen Z is actually posting on Facebook. So they prefer the Instagram, and they also prefer Instagram because it's faster. When you think about the advancement in technology and how fast everything is. I was reading an article not so long ago, and the authors of the article were telling their clients, if in your advertisements you don't communicate in 5 words or less and a big picture, you won't reach Generation Z. It needs to be brief, concise, but really attention grabbing. Now, one of the other elements that we see here, and this is also kind of a Facebook kind of issue, is the difference between being public about everything that you're doing, which is what millennials were doing, and Gen Z looking at that and saying, no, we need to be a lot more private about this. Okay, now, I get it. We still see examples in the news of members of our younger generation publishing nude photos of themselves on some form of social media and the problems that's causing for them. But one of the problems we've always had with technology is that it advances faster than the rules that go along with it. So millennials' experience with Facebook has been, hey, let's just post pictures of everything that we're doing, not thinking that posting a picture of themselves at a keg party at a fraternity house the night before they went in for a job interview might not have been the best idea they possibly could have had. Gen Z has seen the impact of those experiences on their elder siblings and are therefore a lot more private about what they put out there into the world. And of course, as parents catching up with what has happened with technology, we're having more conversations with Generation Z about these privacy factors. So that's one of the key differences we see. Now, second one is historical experience. And I wish I didn't have to list this first, but we do. And that's the kinds of experiences that these two generations, Millennials and Generation Z, have had, from Columbine to 9/11 to movie theaters and malls and nightclubs and concerts. They have had all kinds of experiences. But we need to think about the differences again between at what point in life did these two generations experience these. Columbine happened in 1999. If you take the middle of each of the generation of millennials and Gen Z, the middle person in the millennial category was 13 years old when Columbine happened. A Gen Z was 3 years old. On 9/11, the middle of the category of millennials would have been 15. A Gen Z would have been 5. So as we look at Generation Z, there's a quote from an article I saw recently that said, Gen Z has never had the luxury of a threat-free perspective on life. From the time they were aware of what was going on around them, safety became a huge, huge issue. And that's something that we have to take a look at, is that safety net. And we've all heard about helicopter parents. Hover, 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 and then as soon as something goes wrong, they are boots on the ground, ready to solve the problem for the millennial category and Gen Z as well. Understandable, given the historical experiences. So we're talking about past experience. We're also talking about physical safety within the environment. I know of many manufacturing facilities who actually have plant tours for parents when they are hiring members of Gen Z, so that the parents know that safety really, truly is an important factor to that company. But there's also the issue of emotional safety. You know, one of the things that has been said about millennials for some time is, oh, they expect everything to be very positive. Well, in the wake of all of the negativity within their historical experience, yeah, parents, teachers, all of us have tried to make sure that millennials will have that kind of positive experience, and we're doing the same thing with Generation Z. But in both cases, these generations want to make a difference. We've been saying for years now about millennials are more likely to volunteer than any of the other generations. And this is certainly true also of Gen Z. But there's something else I think we need to keep in mind about Generation Z, and that is, situations like Parkland, Florida. What we saw with those high school students after that horrible incident, the activism of those students. Now, I'm not talking about which side of the gun control issue that we're on. I'm talking about the actions of those individuals. Previous generations, only people of wealth or rank could lead. But for Generation Z, with social media, any one of them can stand up and be a leader at any given moment in time. And then secondly, think of this. These are generations, especially Generation Z, where same-sex marriage, a black president, are a given in their lifetime. And they expect social progress to reflect ethnic diversity that is woven throughout their lives in what they see in the work environment especially. And so these historical experiences are things that I think we cannot ignore with regard to both Millennials and Generation Z. But now let's take a look at something that really seems to be having a huge impact, and that's parental influence. If you look at Millennials, many Millennials parents are baby boomers, or at the very least, very early Gen Xers, whereas many Gen Z parents are Gen X. Now, we baby boomers, we were all about go out there and find yourself. See what kind of opportunities might be available to you. Seek and ye shall find. Gen X, on the other hand, grew up in a time of Watergate and Iran-gate and instability within the economy and said, find yourself. Who has time for that? You need to find stability in your work environment. Because Gen X many times had to work at McDonald's, noble job, but had to work there with a college degree, a bachelor's, even a master's degree, until the opportunities were available. And so as a result, they have instilled different mindsets in their children. Millennials, baby boomers were focused on self-esteem. Want to make sure that you feel like you can be the best person that you can be. Whereas Gen X has told Gen Z, listen, you've got to be self-sufficient, okay? You never know what might happen as a result of the economy or anything else around you. So make your own way in the world. Don't just go out there looking to see what opportunities are in front of you. And as you look at that economic viewpoint, well, we see some differences too, where Millennials came into the workforce expecting opportunity. When I first started facilitating training on generations back in 2004, it's all I kept hearing was the word entitlement. Oh, they think entitled that opportunity is going to be in front of them. Yeah, well, the recession pretty much crashed a lot of the dreams of Millennials, and they realized that it wasn't just going to be given to them. But from the word go, we have told Gen Z, you better create your own opportunity. Gen Z saw their parents get laid off. They may have actually, the entire family moved in with grandparents during the recession in order to get through that time period. So as a result, you oftentimes see Millennials and Gen Z referred to as dreamers versus realists. Dreamers want their job to have a purpose to it. So does Gen Z, the realists. They want a purpose, but survival and thriving in that work environment are also important. And there are studies out there that are actually showing that Gen Z, being realists, have a tendency to steer away more from risky behaviors and more toward sensible careers and career choices. Stability seems to be more important to this Gen Z as they enter the workforce than when we first saw Millennials enter the workforce. And then, of course, we have the school environment. School is certainly a completely different place for me than it is for the younger generation. Any of you who are parents of elementary school children out there helping your children through the new math, well, you know exactly what I mean. And for those of you who've not had that experience, find a parent who is trying to help their child with their math homework, and they'll show you what I mean by that. But one of the things that we find for both Millennials and Gen Z is the team environment. What you read about in history class, you write about in English class, and you do an experiment on in science class. That team environment is certainly there for both generations. But that collaborative mindset that the team environment created with millennials is still there, but not to the same extent with Gen Z. As a matter of fact, we're finding more and more that Gen Z is a little bit more competitive. In fact, in terms of competitive, because of what they saw with the downturn in the economy, Gen Z is more likely to have that mindset of, you know what, there are winners and losers. And you need to be competitive in order to survive. So while they're both team-oriented, you may see different mindsets regarding what happens on that team. We also see a difference in the school environment between mentored learning and experiential learning. In both, again, both generations expect that there will be mentors. But Gen Z is very, very much into the experiential learning. And in fact, in many school systems, Gen Z is given the opportunity to design their own learning experiences, design their own gaming experiences even, and then to go ahead and teach their peers about what they just learned. Which, makes a whole lot of sense, because for those of us who years ago read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, what did he say in there? One of the most effective habits of successful people is that they know they've learned something because they can turn around and teach it to others. And Gen Z is positioned and ready to do exactly that.
Okay, thanks, Deb. At this point, now that Deb has discussed the differences between millennials and Gen Z, we do want to ask another question of the audience, and that is, if you do have Gen Z in your workplace, have you noticed a difference between them and the millennials? So we'll give you some time now to answer that. Okay, Deb, while everybody's voting, we did have a question come in. I guess we lost the audio when you were talking about the millennials. So if you could do another quick recap of the millennials.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I could have shut up at that point, and we could have gone forward. Anyway, we're saying now, based on research with the Zennials, the Gen Y, that category of kind of a hybrid between Gen X and Millennials, that the Millennial category is actually more 1986 to 1995. And again, if you're thinking about the Gen X, Gen Y, or the Zennials would have purchased their own cell phones for themselves when they first owned them. Millennials were the first generation where we purchased it for them for the sake of their safety. Where are you? Are you safe? And if not, we know now, because you have the phone, that you have a means of contacting someone to get the help that you may need. And of course, the millennial category is the one that we have been talking about for quite some time now. But I think we need to do the math on that. If you take a look at millennials, the eldest, 1986, and do the math, we're talking about people who are 33 years old. And we oftentimes view the millennial category as still a 16, 17-year-old person, and not realizing that this is a category in a completely different phase of life than the Gen Z that we're talking about. And so oftentimes that's something that I think is a misnomer out there, as people just throw the term millennial around just to refer to anybody younger than they are. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Deb. And now I will show you the results of this poll.
Okay, so you do have Gen Z in your workplace, and some of you have been noticing some of the differences between them and the millennials. It's still almost a little bit more than a 50-50 split. I would anticipate that that would be your response at this point, because as we said, the eldest of the Gen Z are 23 right now, so we don't know yet what's coming up in terms of some of these characteristics we've been talking about and what that impact will be. A lot of the information about Generation Z right now is anticipated information based on current life experiences, current habits during college, for example. And so that's, I would anticipate that would be the difference. It'd be interesting if we all got back together again 2 years from now and see if those numbers change. So, all right. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so now that we have a bit of the contrast here between what we're seeing so far between the millennial and the Gen Z category, let's just take a look at how these experiences will affect Generation Z in the workplace based on this anticipated information. One of the first things that we're seeing is that Generation Z prefers that they be recruited on Twitter, that they can apply on a mobile app, and they can interview via Skype. I mean, technology they are digital natives, not technologically savvy, but digital natives. So why wouldn't they expect that the way we draw them in to our organization would be in native ways, that they are drawn into other subjects or drawn into information? Okay, the second thing that I think we need to think about is this whole experiential learning and what the expectation is about how they want to be trained. For example, we need to think about YouTube videos. How many of us, regardless of generation, if you needed to fix a leaky faucet, have gone to a YouTube video? So does your organization have YouTube videos, especially put together by your retiring baby boomers who have this native knowledge about the organization and about the culture, and most importantly, about your customers and your customer base? Are they doing YouTube videos that are accessible 24/7 for your new hires? What about gaming? Not just for fun, but this Generation Z, if they're going to learn by gaming, then it needs to be really practical, not just to do it to keep them engaged. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I think we make, is we're worried about engagement, and we should be, but engagement without there being really any experience to it doesn't work with Generation Z. They learn by trying. And how much tolerance do you have for trial and error in the learning process of your training programs? Are we still doing the typical orientation programs of PowerPoint presentations of what the what the retirement benefits are and what the health care package is all about? I mean, they can get that in so many other ways. Talk to them. Have discussion groups about how you succeed in this organization. If this is a generation that's concerned about practicality, and this is a generation that wants to make sure that they have a stable work career based on what their Gen X parents are telling them, then we should have this kind of experiential learning and mentorship, not just talk about it, but have it actually built into the system. And then we have also the frequency of feedback. All right, think about it. Instagram, you get feedback. I mean, we asked you questions and you gave us feedback within just a couple of moments. So this is a generation that will be expecting frequent feedback. I mean, think about the immediacy of a report card. Back in my day, you received a report card in the mail, okay, dinosaur here, every 6 to 9 weeks. And if you got to the mailbox before your parents did, you could just tell them that it got lost in the mail so that they wouldn't know you just got a D in chemistry. But that's not the case for Generation Z. This immediate feedback is there all the time. And if you don't have a system in place in your organization to be able to give that frequency of feedback, Gen Z feels like something is broken, okay? And one of the things that we say, oftentimes is, we don't have time for that kind of thing. But think about it. This frequency of feedback has taught Generation Z the value of self-monitoring. How well am I doing? Is that a bad quality for an employee to have in your organization? I don't think so. They see on social media on a daily basis how their peers are mattering in the world, okay? And how they're making a difference. And that recognition through social media needs to happen in our work environment regularly as well. How did this Gen Z employee make a difference today? And how do we do that? Well, there's project management software out there available that can tell us, what people have accomplished, that can make this broadcasting possible so that people can see how well people are doing. So I think that's something that's a very, very critical element to change in our cultures, is that frequency of feedback through the system, through the manager and the supervisor, through teammates. It's part of their world. And again, they will feel like something is broken if it isn't in the world of your workplace. And then, of course, that ability to influence the world that we talked about as a result of some of the experiences. Not only do they want to influence the world at large and want to volunteer and want to see that you have an organization that contributes to the community and that you have tolerance for them leaving early so that they can go volunteer at the Red Cross blood donation campaign, and that's not going to be points against them because they left early that day. But influence the world at large, influence the work world. Do only managers post on the company website, or can everybody do that? Does everyone really have a say during brainstorming? These are some of the things that we really need to think about in terms of what Gen Z will expect.
Okay, Deb, we did have a question come in. How can managers provide the constant feedback that Gen Z prefers and still accomplish their own tasks and goals?
Okay, that's an important question because it's actually a systemic question. Our systems right now have working managers. And so as a result, yes, managers are mostly being evaluated by the tasks that they accomplish and the goals they achieve. And if you ask any one of the facilitators with the Center for Corporate and Professional Development, we will tell you that when someone has strong technical ability and they are promoted into a management role, it's a whole different set of competencies that they need to be managers. And some of the companies that Millennials and Gen Z alike prefer to work for are ones where they promote people into management because they have those management competencies and they have the availability of a promotion for people with good technical ability into other kinds of roles. And it's one of the elements that I read constantly in books about how Gen Z will affect the workplace is that we need managers who manage and who are coordinators as opposed to trying to be both things. So I know that's kind of a long-term answer to that question, but it's something that I know there's a lot of HR people who are listening today, and I think it's something we need to take a look at in this system. What are our managers really being evaluated on? The accomplishment of those goals or managing people? All right, now opportunity is something that Gen Z absolutely expects. They expect that we will acknowledge their brand, and they are all about being a brand. They start working on that in junior high. I can't tell you how many members of this Generation Z I have run into who have already their own business card saying what they're interested in, what they want to do. They expect that at a job fair that you will exchange business cards with them and stay in contact with them throughout their high school, their college career, that there will be opportunities to come in and shadow people, not necessarily even in a formal type of program, but just, can I call you and come shadow you for a day kind of thing, because they're developing that brand. And they expect, when I mention about they're team-minded but they're more competitive, they expect their talents to be showcased by the team. Yeah, they're going to give team credit, but they want their individual talents showcased by that as well. Second thing we have to think about here is that they want to have the opportunity for advancement based on skills, not based on the traditionalist mindset of seniority. Now, the fortunate thing here is that this is something that Gen X has been changing, because Gen X feels that same way. You know, just because you've been around for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that you should be the one who gets the opportunity to work on certain projects. And Gen Z will demand this, not just expect it, but demand this. So as a result, I think we need to be very clear on redefining what pay your dues means. For traditionalists and baby boomers, what we told Gen X and Millennials was pay your dues means shut up and learn. And that is just not the experience of Gen Z. What do you mean, shut up and learn? I've always been a part of a discussion, always been a part of hands-on knowledge. So for Generation Z, we need to let them know what the rules are about how people are going to be promoted. And I know in certain cases that's tough because, for example, some of you listening in that are in government agencies, seniority still really matters. And your Gen Z new hires are going to need to understand where that's coming from in your culture and what the rules are, and they want to know, why do you believe that that's fair that way? Because this is a generation who wants to take risks to grow. Now, I said before that they're cautious about those risks, but they want to try. They want the availability of being able to try. Why? Because of FOMO. Now, there are going to be some of you out there that say, what the heck did she just say? What does that stand for? Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. Gen Z, there is so much out there available to them. And because of technology, they know that there's so much available that they should be able to try. Why can't those opportunities be there? One of the things that we have talked about with millennials for so long is that they are multitaskers. Okay, Gen Z, not so much the multitaskers as much as they are a task switcher. Think about that, a task switcher. I have this task I'm doing right now. I've done as much of that as I possibly can. Now I'm going to switch to something else because I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to engage in this other activity. All right, now, it's interesting, for Gen X supervisors, this may frustrate you because you may be saying, okay, no, wait a minute. You've got to complete that task before you move on. But and why are you, switching so quickly and coming to me and asking for what can you do next? Okay, I don't want you to come to me all the time. That frustrates Gen X supervisors because Gen X is known as independent problem solvers as well. Playing the original video games, you pushed the reset button until you got to level 4. You did it on your own, and you want Gen Z to do the same thing. So Gen X supervisors and Gen Z associates may need to have that conversation about how long to try on your own before you give up and switch to something else. But think about this, Gen Xers, supervisors, and managers out there. You are parallel processors. You start one project, go to a second, go on to a third one, go to a fourth one, go back to the first one, finish that, go to a fifth one. You have several things going at the same time. Gen Z can do the same thing. It's just that you may have to be a little bit clearer about making sure that the tasks are completed along the way. So that's one of the questions that people typically ask me is, they want to move on. We give them this list of what you can do to have opportunity, and so they complete it like a checklist, but they don't focus on quality, only quantity. And this may be a very, very important question that mentors and supervisors need to have with this generation, that quality needs to happen. It's not just a checklist. But one of the biggest things that this generation is looking for is fluid job assignments. They want to work in this department for a while, and then they want to work in another department for a while. And that's not necessarily always what the case is. And so it's important, I think, that we look at our structure again to see whether we can offer that or not. But again, I think if we look at historical experience, we need to understand a couple of things about how Gen Z will be responding to people in the workplace. Respect for authority is not automatic. We've told them just because an adult tells you that they have candy in their van, don't follow that adult. So please remember that their definition of respect is different. If calling you dude is not something that's okay with you, then that might be a conversation that you need to have, because they also expect informality and sharing expected. They will share about their personal life with their managers, but they're not looking for parental advice. A manager is a part of their team, and so as a result, they're sharing with their team, and they expect their managers to share lessons learned, especially the times that the manager screwed up. But don't talk about it from the standpoint of, oh, I screwed up, and boy, did I get in all kinds of trouble. That created character in me. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear what you learned from it, and they want that story to be short, sweet, and concise. You also need to define what run with it means. They're a do-it-yourself generation. As far as they're concerned, other generations have overcomplicated the workplace. Okay? If you say run with it, they're going to run with it. They're going to contact anybody that they possibly can to do that. So what do you mean by run with it? Are there parameters? They've got to consider budget, time, manpower. Then be clear. Don't just say run with it and then disappoint them when they come back with a great idea that you say no. And then there's the side hustle. The side hustle is a volunteering kind of experience. I mentioned it before. Are you going to give them time off for that and not penalize them for having this energy to make the difference in the world? They absolutely want face-to-face, truthful, clear communication. And that may seem weird because you see Gen Z running around with phones all of the time. But they do want this face-to-face, quality kind of communication with anyone who can be that mentor that will have impact on their success. So be truthful, be clear. If you say, finish this task and we will talk about you leaving early, that's not clear. Finish this task, come back and talk to me, and then we will discuss whether or not leaving early is still a possibility. There's a distinction there that must be very clear. And I guess this last category is important. Remember the school experience. There's flexibility, all kinds of flexibility. If you're a junior, senior in high school and you have a first period study hall, but you're getting good grades, you don't have to show up until second period. You tell a Gen Z they're doing a good job, they may not show up until an hour after their starting time the very next day. And I'm not just saying that as a hypothetical. I have had now in the last 6 months 4 managers tell me that that's exactly what happened. They told them they did a good job. They showed up an hour late. And they said, because in high school, that's what we were allowed to do. Second one, very important, forget the trophy. This is a competitive generation, okay? They were raised during the Great Recession. They know there are winners and losers. Millennials said, don't focus on my weakness, only develop my strength. Gen Z's realistic. They're saying, look, give me the tools to win, either by talking to me about where I'm not doing so well, or by maximizing my strengths, or both, but give me the tools to win. Forget about the trophy. I don't need the meaningless token of just being here. And I mentioned this a minute ago, but my manager is my teammate. They don't see hierarchy. And that's where that traditionalist mindset is still in many, many work environments. A manager is my teammate, and so we are working together through problems. And as a result, I will challenge what I hear. That's what a Gen Z will tell you. Why? Because the teacher said, challenge me. I don't want you believing everything you see on social media. I don't want you believing everything you hear, even in a podcast of any type. Go do the research, challenge what you hear, and Gen Z will challenge you in the workplace. And oftentimes I hear old school managers who will say, that's just coddling this generation. Well, once again, I say that when you have a difference in this kind of mindset, maybe we need to change the performance requirements for the managers, that this isn't about command and control. They need to know truly how to empower people, how to coach, how to mentor, how to be challenged in that situation and not simply respond because I'm the supervisor, shut up and go do it. That will not resonate well with Generation Z. And why is that? Because they're a do-it-yourself generation. They expect customization of work assignments, environments, career paths, because they believe themselves to be this brand that they bring to you. Is that a bad thing? That they have this much energy and creativity and desire to make this difference? I don't think so. But is your organization ready for Gen Z?
Okay, thank you, Deb. We are running short on time. We do not actually have any additional questions. So that does conclude our time together today. I want to thank you again for joining us and also sticking with us through the technical difficulties that we experienced today. There is a handout available to you that summarizes today's presentation. It is located under the Handouts tab on the control panel. We encourage you to download it for you to refer back to at a later time. If you would like to learn more about today's topic, we encourage you to register for one of the upcoming programs that will be delivered on April 17th and also on October 16th at the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio in Independence. You can see the registration link on your screen. I do encourage you to register soon, as this program is real close to being full. We can also tailor any program and deliver it on site for your team. You can join our extensive list of clients and bring Kent State to your organization. You can contact us at 330-672-3416 or email us at yourtrainingpartner@kent.edu. We also encourage you to register for our next webinar, The Power of Attitude, with Kent State facilitator Marvin Montgomery, when we'll discuss the realization that storms will come into our lives and the 7 ways to maintain a positive attitude when things are not going your way. For those of you attending live, you will be asked to complete a short survey. Please complete the survey so that we can be assured that we are bringing you the most usable and relevant content possible. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Kent State University's Center for Corporate and Professional Development and our facilitator, Deborah Easton, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.